Hey friends, today on Life Beyond 9 to 5, we interview Alyson, her entrepreneurial journey as a single mom. We talk a lot about failure, how to bounce back from failure, why it's important for an entrepreneur. We talk about why taking a break or going back to the workforce can actually be a good thing and help you along your journey. And we all share stories of how we've had to do that on our 9 to 5 rebel journeys and what it really means to have things that bring you joy in your life and what to do when you lose your motivation and how to keep following that enthusiasm even if you don't feel like getting out of bed.
My fatal flaw is like starting something and being like, it's not immediately successful. What the fuck? Like, what's going on? And it's like, you literally haven't told anyone, it's like you didn't do the things enough to where people have established it in their mind. And then because what happens is they hear about it and they're like, oh, that's cool. And they hear about it again. They're like, oh, I should do that. And they're like, oh, I keep hearing about that. Oh, I've been meaning to talk to them about that. And it's like seven times. And then they go, yeah, I should probably go to that next one. And so you're sitting there making all this content and reaching out to them and doing the seven things, and probably 50 other things. And you're like, nobody's doing anything because you're not seeing that it's happening in their mind. It's happening out there. They're just not on they're not on the call to action yet.
Alyson, can you share like what your business is or what you're working on? I don't think I know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So last year in about May, I started an AI consultancy because I was seeing this lag between the technology and the user. And there was this really sharp contention between creatives and the AI space.
I'm so curious to hear from you, Alyson. Like, as you have gone through Sail AI and kind of like
Yeah,
all the exploration there, our topic of conversation today was really kind of like finding happiness through the pursuit of entrepreneurial insanity. How are
yeah,
you keeping yourself grounded and like reminding yourself that it takes those 7 steps?
yeah. That's a great question. It's tricky because there's a lot with Sail that it felt like my first like big girl business. You know what I mean? And it was at I don't know, Adrienne, how much you know about my story, but I met Morgan because I was trying to take on like an external HR person basically, and like kind of trying to figure out what that looked like. But yeah, I think for me, like it's tricky because there's so much with Sail that I still am processing out of how it's gone on. So we talked a little bit about like I'm going through divorce. I'm going through like some of these kind of personal tectonic plates are shifting.
Mhm.
And I really haven't had the support in my career that I needed in order to do the things I wanted to do. So it was like this kind of struggle of like, I hit the right moment in time to start the business. I found the right people and I still didn't have support. I still didn't have the basic structural things that I need in my life. There was this kind of like, wow, this is challenging because every mediocre man that I know has this baseline level of support and they've always had the expectation of that support. And so I've really been battling with a lot of just like the reality of that because I'm one of those women where like if I come up against something where it's clearly like the effect of the patriarchy or the effect of sexism, then I go, all right, how do I get around this? Like, I don't want to go solve this as the problem. Like, I don't want to go make my life about this. I just want to find a way around this because nobody can take my success away from me no matter what they think of me, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't I don't like when I don't like making a big fuss about it and making it, oh, it's woe is me and I'm a victim. Like I'm like, how do I just get past it so I can pull other people up? Because to me, that's the greatest way to like move beyond some of those barriers. But just realizing how much I just couldn't do that on my own was so infuriating. So I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, oh, this is something that it's not just me. Because like you trip on the sidewalk on that one part of the sidewalk and you think, oh God, I'm so clumsy, like I tripped. Everybody else has tripped on that part of the sidewalk. Everybody who walked before you, like literally tripped right there, but nobody did anything about it. So everybody keeps tripping, right?
Yeah.
So for me now, it's like, okay, so I think as far as like establishing that business, I think the moment has passed. And so how do I incorporate what I know about that now into what I'm doing, which is what I've done? Um, and I can talk more about that, but like, how do I just kind of, um, take what I've learned and apply it towards what needs to happen? Because there's so much about this story that is familiar to so many women.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is such a poignant topic, and it's something that I've been considering as well as I've like kind of transitioned from full time in the business to part time and working full time again. Um,
Yeah.
how are you like it just feels so poignant coming like back into the workforce that it's like the place where I was having the most rapid growth um professionally was when I was running my own business. Is
Yeah.
Do you feel like there, yeah, like upon it like navigating the workforce again, are you like coming up against those kinds of gatekeeping moments and trying to figure out how do I stop tripping on this sidewalk?
Kind of and kind of not. I realized that I kind of took some time for a bit and realized that I I really had already kind of gotten to a point in my career where most people have most people when they're at this point, they have a team around them that's helping them learn leadership skills, you know? And I was like, man, I really don't have a lot of entrepreneurs around me that to learn from. And especially with, we talked about the situation with Rob, so the fund, you know, potential funding partner, that whole situation. And every entrepreneur that I know has a story like that where they either got in bed with the wrong person or they lost a lot of money, you know, from a partner that they had already started working with. Um, and I was like, all right, so it's not that I like did anything wrong necessarily because I think this is inevitable in the entrepreneurial journey that like if you're moving big numbers around, some of them are going to fall through. But but I just needed to take a step back and go like, do I know what I need to know to continue on this path right now and be successful? Because I had kind of started my first business as a reaction to not getting the work that I wanted to get. So I wasn't getting the jobs. I didn't have the experience at all. And I shouldn't have been getting the jobs. So I just started freelancing. I was like, all right, I'll teach myself what I need to know. Right. So I almost just kind of like built a door and then kicked it down, like to start my first business. And then this was my first real, like, well structured, you know, business that was going to include other people. And I was planning to scale and have, you know, a number of teams involved. And um, so now I'm like, okay, let's think about this from in 5 years. You know, where do I actually want to be in 5 years instead of just continuing to like hit the ground running, right? So when I started here, I saw the job posting and I was like, this looks like a real job posting, you know, because sometimes you read them and you're like, this is not real at all. Um, and then I met these guys and it was just a really good fit. It was just this alignment. And I was like, these are the guys I need to learn from. Like, these are the guys that I need to be around to figure out how seasoned, mature leaders lead a business. And they've been doing it for 15 years, you know, so there's just something about that that I think is this is where I need to be. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think it does. You like went out and you felt this gap. You knew you wanted this like leadership experience and you didn't have the community, call it, like around you, the
yeah,
support system, the foundation, to be able, whether it's like you taking yourself seriously or like other people taking you seriously,
yeah,
whatever kind of seriousness that is, you have now like gone and found an opportunity that gives you that support system.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How are you like this is so interesting. So and I'm so glad we're catching up here because it sounds
yeah,
like you kind of moved away from Sale AI and now you're
yep.
working somewhere. Um, what has the transition of like setting one thing down and picking another thing up looked like?
Rough because I don't like doing that. I am not good at like telling when it's time because I either immediately go, well, nobody answered my email, so obviously it's done, you know? Or like I'll launch a product and be like, there's no one on the website. Why is there no one? Like, why are there no orders? Like, what's going on? You know? And, or I'll just hang on so long that it's like, it's beating a dead horse. So I really just took it out as an opportunity. Since I know that about myself, I took it as an opportunity to go to people in my life who I know have run businesses, who I know have successful careers and go, okay, here's the situation I'm in. what do you think? Because there's also a lot of other stuff clouding my judgment. So I just did a lot of perspective taking because I know when I'm not looking at things clearly. I don't know what I'm not seeing, but I know when I'm not. So for me, it was just about, and I really do have a fantastic support system. I've really curated some really wonderful people in my life who not only professionally but personally can say, this is what I know about you, this is what I know about the situation, this is what I think would be best, and then just kind of like culminating all of that information into a good direction. Like full-time parenting, trying to run this business, like doing everything, and I was just burning out fast. So it was just one of those things where it was like something's got to give and it's not going to be my daughter. And so I was trying to navigate like how do I manage this? Like how do I turn this into a win? Because I was really between a rock and a hard place, and there was a lot of real money on the table too. So we did have some really wonderful opportunities, but that it just all kind of ended up falling through. So I was telling Morgan like a lot of it for me was like this is not a unique story, unfortunately. Like with women starting businesses, this is not unique to me because I was like I'm not uniquely bad at this. Like this is not and and also, like, one, there's no resources for moms. Two, there's very few resources for female entrepreneurs. I mean, female entrepreneurs only get probably 3% of the funding every year. So it's just, I was like, I was kind of just like uniquely, newly enraged about it all. Because I saw this, and this is not the first time that I tried to start a business and been told basically, like, you gotta figure it out then, like in your free time and your margins, like whatever you have, instead of really being given the tools that I need to do the thing that I'm meant to do in the world. Yeah, so I'm in a position now where I'm like I needed to be around a team that I felt like was supporting me and able to move me forward in my career and not just be in the position where I was doing everything by myself and like trying to kind of have my cake and eat it too almost. Because I also couldn't not work. So yeah, it was just like one of those things where I was trying to figure out what the right solution was, and I really felt like for a while I had labeled like getting a job as failure, and I had to relook at that because I was like, you know what, like failure is letting my daughter down and not providing for her and not creating a safe environment for her and like and creating a life for myself that keeps me running full speed every day. Like that's failure actually. So
Yeah.
I realized I was kind of doing that. And so now I'm in a great position. I have a wonderful job and I have a wonderful team and it's a great culture fit too. Like absolutely couldn't have designed a better job or company for myself. And the guys who run it they're just really seasoned leaders and it's been really and they believe in me too. Like the first week I was like they do something called user manuals, which is where every employee writes down like how they want to be communicated with, how they like to get feedback, like what their favorite dessert is, like all sorts of stuff. And because it's a remote team. And what I like, what I don't like, what kind of relationship I want to have with my coworkers, etc. And I was like seeing the same things over and over again. And I went to Peter's office and I was like, you guys really vet for values and culture, don't you? He was like, yeah, 100%. Like that's the biggest thing for us. He said, we're a company of misfits, but we all misfit in the same way. And I was like, wow. And he was like, you can relax. You're in. And I was like, I almost cried. I was like, I don't know that I can relax, but I will try.
Oh my gosh, how did it feel to like hear him say that to you?
It was wild. It was wild because I feel like one, I was understood in my interviews. Like I showed up as myself, but I was also seen and accepted as myself in a corporate environment, which for me, that's a unique experience. Like I've always had to mask hardcore in a corporate environment. And I was like, I don't like trying to like figure out how to not do that. It's been really odd, you know, being like, oh, the value is that I'm me. Oh, what? Because I can do that as an entrepreneur. I could be whoever, right?
What you said, Alyson, about this like redefining failure, and it reminded me of this ago. I went through something very similar where I started my own consultancy business in the tech field, and I had a bunch of stuff happen in my personal life, and I went through this really bad relationship breakup, and it basically like my personal life was in shambles, and
Yeah.
I just this point where I couldn't keep doing the business and like keep living. I had something
Yeah.
had to give, and I was like verged. I had a couple customers, and I was like growing, and I was like it could have been successful, but something had to give and that was it. And I went back to,
Yeah.
the W-2 world. And I also had to redefine failure and say, okay, what is real failure? And like, you've always put food on the table. You have always, provided for the things that you need in life. And like, you've always like made ends meet at the end of the month and you have made it through. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people have this story where they've had to maybe take a step back, right? But it's not really taking a step back because I think whatever you learn from it and whatever you take from it, the next thing that you go for, you're going to do it better.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. You're so right. So when you did that, when you redefined that for yourself, did it feel like it was true or did you have a hard time believing the new story?
It was hard at first, but I think you have to know like what resonates for you as truth. And for me, like writing it all down on a piece of paper, and then I looked at that every day for a month, and then I erased it.
Yeah.
Like over, it's like that. And this is like getting a little bit into manifesting and mindset. Whatever you tell yourself every day is really important. And so anytime I've wanted to shift that internal story every day, at least once, sometimes multiple times a day. Here's the story. Here's the new story. And it works.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot because I went out with somebody a couple times and I've always like, this is more personal, but like I've always been around really critical people like in my personal life because there's something about somebody being critical of me that feels like they're telling me the truth when it's not. That's not the full truth. Like the bad things are not the full truth. It's the bad things and the good things, and the bad things shared in love don't feel like criticism. Like I thought about it. I asked a friend of mine, I said, like, why don't you ever like tell me, like give me hard feedback? And she said, I do all the time. And I was like, it never feels like that. She said it shouldn't feel like that. It should feel like love. And I was like, wow, that yeah, you're right. You're totally right. But I've been so used to that. And I went out with somebody a couple times and I asked a couple times, like, I set a date for us and then I was like, is this done? Like, is this, and he was like, no, why would you shut up? Like, why are you asking me to tell you that it's done? And I was like, it's a great point. I'm going to think about it later. But it's this thing of what are you inviting into your life? Because I think we can sometimes see like, oh, there's all this stuff in my life that I don't want. It's like, well, why did you invite that in? Why didn't you choose what you actually want or what's actually good for you?
Yeah, like we almost feel like we're not allowed to be happy. This
totally
ties in people have been talking about in the Slack channel of, this like being happy feels like it should be unattainable, almost like if you get it, oh no, what am I doing wrong? So, yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Morgan?
Yeah, I think that there's just so many synchronicities here because largely this is what Adrienne teaches is like around finding happiness. And it seems like we're like each one of us in our own way have had to like kind of let something go for something else to grow. And that has been something that I have told myself through this kind of process of face planting and standing back up again emotionally is like that it's not failure if like something else grows from it. You were talking so much about perspective earlier, Alyson, and I'm wondering if you can share like you have such a powerful sense of perspective and a very we're gonna say like rigorous filter, it seems like when it comes to interacting with people and like bringing those people into your life. Like how did you craft that like filter and perspective for yourself?
Ooh, that's a really good question. You ask such good questions. I think, well, one, I have a friend in my life she's absolutely fantastic. She's about 76 and she's just lived a really wonderful life. And I didn't believe people could be that happy until I met her. I didn't believe it at first. Like I met her and I was like, that's fake. And it's totally not. And she also annoyed me because I was so depressed. I didn't believe that I was depressed, but I was so depressed. And she was so happy that I was like, fuck out of here, Mel. Who are you? You're a fake person, you know? And so, but she is so real. And one thing that she's taught me is that you should just look for only the best possible things that be around people that you just think I can't believe I get to be around these people. These people are the absolute best. Only go places that you think I cannot wait to go there. I'm so excited. And like it makes you filter out all these things that you think you don't go to the party that you're like, well, I should go. They expect me, like, and her whole thing is it's not selfish because if you go to the places that you can't wait to go to, if everybody did that, every place you'd go would be great. Every place you'd work, everybody would feel aligned and connected where they work. Every party would feel so buzzed because everybody's just like anticipating and excited, enthusiastic. And the moment that it's not working, you can send it off with love. And so many of us, I think we just don't know how to quite navigate. This was working and now it's not. And yes, there's conflict and like all of these things, but I think so often we think about like being in a healthy place as like how to navigate the hard stuff. And it's like, yes, it is that. But if you keep yourself in this filter of like this heat sensor for the problems, then you don't actually get to use the skill of like finding what you're actually really enthusiastic about and looking for that and only trying to be in those kinds of spaces with those kinds of people. And so she's taught me a lot about just like I'll tell her like, oh, I'm gonna go do this thing, and she's like, are you excited? And I'm like, and she's like, why would you do it? Why would you go do that? Like, stop. Don't do that then. Like, and it's just so simple for her because it's one, she doesn't, it's a little bit easier because she doesn't operate within an organization. So she's had a bunch of companies, but she hasn't been like within a company. So there are some real aspects of like, I tested her on this the other day. I was like, Mel, like I have a daughter. Like I can't just do things that make me feel enthusiastic because I have a 3-year-old who sometimes I don't feel enthusiastic about doing those things. And she's like, yes, but you're enthusiastic about the outcome of what that thing is going to bring into your life. And you can center on that. Like you can center on, I get to teach my daughter about this thing because I'm so excited to see the person that she becomes when she knows this. And so for me, it's just about following that enthusiasm because I think if more of us were connected to what we felt like that about, then everything would be better.
Yeah.
Ooh, I just I have like tingles over that.
And it's like, it's partially filtering out the stuff that you don't love, but then it's partially like a mindset too. I think another good maybe people can relate to is like going to the gym. Like I'm a lifter. I love to lift heavy weights, but do I feel like excited about every single gym sesh? Like no.
Right.
Like some days I'm tired and I feel like it, but it's like you said, I want this outcome. I know I will feel better when and if you can connect to that, you can do like almost anything,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that like what you said too, like that's, like I've started to work out in the mornings before work and I'm not like, bing, I woke up this morning. But the way Mel puts it is like, she's like, waking up is so much better than the alternative. And sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I'll be like, oh, and then I think about her saying, waking up is so much better than the alternative. And I'm like, you know what it is? Like, why am I mad? This is actually the best case scenario is that I wake up, like, why am I making this terrible for no reason? But something like that, right? Where you're like, I gotta put my pants, I gotta get out of bed and it's not cozy anymore. Then I think that's an important moment for self-awareness because sometimes when I've pushed myself, it's been from a place of striving and tension. And like, I actually needed to there's moments where I used to push myself through PMSing and I'd work out and I'd do all the things I did and I'd try to hustle hard every day, because I want the outcome. But I learned that I just need to relax sometimes because the energy is going to come back after my period's over. Like it's going to come back. But it was from this place of like, no, I have to keep consistency every single day because that's what we're taught to do, right? So for me, like there's something about, and I don't think this is what you're saying. I'm just saying this is something I learned like way too late because I used to be the girl who like every month I was like, why do I feel like shit and have no energy? It's like, because you get a period every month, woman. Like, calm down. It's literally been so many years. So, so that's, I think,
like, I swear, like every month, every person who gets a period every month is like, huh, didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Again? Like, again? Yeah, it's true.
Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now it makes sense. Great. I understand why I was so full of rage.
Yes.
Gosh, this is actually, what you were saying around like it's okay to take a break is actually something that I learned from Adrienne here. And just this of like it doesn't have to be 100% every day.
Yeah.
And that
It's
is
not going to be. It's unrealistic to expect that it would be. Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think that is a lesson that I'm learning every single day. And I've like changed my own mantras recently over some like the last couple of months have been like a real bitch, y'all. And
It sounds like it. You can say that. That's okay.
it's like our meeting, so I can. Um, I had to like go from this mindset that I had been cultivating for myself of like I'm strong, I'm capable, I can do all of these things all the time, to the thing that I say to myself now is like peace and prosperity. Like that is what I want for myself. And that doesn't necessarily look like going 110 all the time, because frankly, it made me face plant and like have a horrible time. So
Yeah.
now what does the new normal look like, and how do I cultivate elements of peace and prosperity for myself in different aspects? And I've specifically been trying to move from seeing like certain things in my life as a burden to like viewing them as liberation. And I think that that is so much of what or it sounds like that's what you're getting at in your conversations with Mel, is like, how do we come from a place of excitement? And if it doesn't bring you peace or prosperity, or if it doesn't bring you excitement, then maybe it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's such a great point.
can we just normalize failure too? I think we're
Totally.
all, especially like a type A driven, like successful person, right? You don't feel like you can fail, and honestly, sometimes it's okay to walk away from stuff. Like last year, I was in the middle of this ADU project, and I was looking ahead, and it was going to be like 5 years to like get the whole thing built and the permits and get it all done, and then like paying it off and all of that. And I just looked at that and I said, I don't want to do this. And so I walked away from it. And it's almost taboo to do things
Yeah.
like that. I think we should all do more. We should all do it
Yeah.
more.
Totally. Well, that's the thing, is being an entrepreneur, failure is built in. A lot of failure is built in. Like, you should probably be failing 70% of the time. If you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you're going to do 10 things and 7 of them won't work. And that is the only way you can create the volume of action that you need as an entrepreneur to actually be successful in any rate. I heard about, there's a military officer training program that Simon Sinek was brought into to observe, I think it's for the Marines, to observe and just let them know where they need to work on their leadership stuff. And he said he was observing the task. They would, have the officers lead a team through a series of tasks. And they didn't count whether the mission failed or succeeded. They just went through and had this like checkbox for different values that the leader exhibited. And he said, why don't you care about whether the mission was accomplished? And they said, because we know that a leader exhibits the values that a leader needs to exhibit on every mission, whether or not the mission fails, and a good leader is bound to have some mission failures. So we don't actually care about the outcome in this test, which the officers didn't know that. We just care about the values they're exhibiting, because the reality is, Morgan, whether you think you're succeeding or failing, you are exhibiting the values that you have and the qualities that you have and the integrity that you have and the drive that you have every single time you do anything. So what does it look like to then count that as your success? Did I exhibit integrity in this? Did I create more kindness in the world? Did I do these 5 metrics that I care about more than whether or not this succeeds or fails? Because I think that is going to wire us to be more like long-term successful.
Exactly. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, wow. Isn't it? Isn't that wild that came from the freaking military? Are you kidding me? I was like, that is weird.
Yeah, like some of the stuff that they teach is really interesting. But it's about that like process of getting the long-term results, right? Like if you if you don't like the process and if you're not able to just keep doing the process, you're never going to get to the goal. Like you can't focus on the goal. You have to focus on, okay, what do I need to do every day? And I think that's a great barometer for like, should I keep doing it? You know, it's like
Yeah.
if what you have to do every day to say, in my example, I'm a life coach, right? Like I have to talk to people, I have to make content, I have to do all these things. And if I don't enjoy that, then maybe that's not the right path, right? And so you have to look
Yeah.
at what you have to do every day, not just like the fun stuff on Instagram, like, oh look, I'm a millionaire and you know, I'm like in this amazing
Yeah. Don't listen to
situation.
any of those people. Don't listen to any of the people that are like, here's my 5-day course on how to be a millionaire just like me. Because they didn't do the 5-day course. That's not what they did. They failed for 20 years and then figured it out. And you're not going to learn what they learned in 20 years in a course.
Exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you have to like make a Canva template and then you'll be a millionaire. And it's like, no.
Yeah. No.
Even if all you have to do, you have to have all of the skills that go into making a successful product, right? And you have to know how
Right.
to market, right? And so they have all these
Yeah.
other businesses, right, that aren't being showcased.
Yeah. It's true. It's very true. Yeah. Do you guys feel like you have people? Go ahead, Morgan.
I was gonna say it's like all the growth from those moments where you did have to step away. And this is actually something dance has taught me is like when you do take a break from something, you come back and it's like more intrinsic in your body. And when you
Yeah.
come back together with it, it clicks more, it makes sense more. And so in these moments when we've like had to step away and like find the new normal, then in the next thing that you build, those pieces they still stay with you. And I think learning that story is the one that like we never get taught as little girls. It's always about like how are you going to be president tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. I was just thinking about as you were talking the Adrienne, you lift and I learned at one point you can only build muscle while your body is resting or while you're sleeping. So while you're in anaerobic is the only time you can actually build muscle. And so you think you're building muscle by lifting, and kind of you are. You're contributing to the cycle of muscles being built, but that initial pump you get from lifting that's not muscle. That's a feeling, and those are hormones, and then the muscle gets built while you're sleeping. So yeah, that thing of I'm going to show up and I'm going to exhibit the qualities because I'm not going to see this as a win right now. I'm going to see this as a win in a week when I can lift more than I lifted last week because I lifted and rested and lifted and rest and lifted and rest.
Yeah, and I think a really good principle here, and this is probably the most important thing I learned from 10 years with tech consultants, is if you're hitting a wall, if you like can't solve something, you need to take that rest. You need to step back. You need to walk away. And I solved my hardest problem while I was doing something else, not even close to the computer.
Yep.
Know?
Yeah.
And it's not in life, you know. Sometimes you just need to stop trying to force something. Stop trying to push so hard.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's weirdly easy when you're aligned with what you're doing. And that doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. That doesn't mean everything is going to be like floating on clouds, but it's easy in like oh, this just kind of happened. Okay. You know, this is meant to be. It's meant to be. And for me, I have an intuition about that. Like I have a feeling when it's going to go right or how it's going to go, whether it's going to go the way I imagine it's going to go or whether it's not. Like I was telling this guy I was seeing about that because I said, I'm not gonna date you right now. I think I'm gonna date you down the road, but I don't think we're gonna date right now. And he was like, yeah, I think you're right. And I was like, do you have that thing where you know that and you don't know why? And he was like, yeah, I do. And it was just kind of funny to like, because he's also very analytical and scientific. And so for me, it was kind of validating because like I saw him at one point and I was like, oh, I brought all this stuff for this thing. Because he invited me to something and then he invited me to something else. And I was like, yeah, I already brought all this stuff for that. And he was like, what? And I was like, I just knew you were going to ask me to do that. And he was like, we didn't even have a plan. I didn't even tell you I was going to invite. And I was like, I know, I just knew it. He was just like, weird, weird going on. But I've learned to tap into that and give it validity, you know? instead of being like, oh, that's not real. It's not based on anything. Da da da. It's like, I knew I was going to have a daughter like 6 months before I even knew. I wasn't even planning to have a baby at all. And I was like, I'm going to have a daughter. And then a year and a half later, I was like, okay, it's weird.
Yeah.
So intuition's a powerful thing.
It so is. Yeah. There's so much on it throughout history. There's so much, it's like women's intuition, but like, and maybe it is a female thing. I don't know. I always wonder about that, but I don't know what it's connected to. Probably everything. But yeah, it's interesting when you give validity to something that's been invalidated in you.
Mm-hmm.
It's super powerful.
Yeah. It's all about that energy, right? And honestly, like this is kind of a fun little story, but I'm in Costa Rica right now because I followed my intuition. I was visiting there in January and I felt this really strong like urge to come to this one town. I was like, I'm supposed to meet somebody there. And, I didn't know who, I didn't know what it was about. I just went, just followed that intuitive urge and ended up meeting my partner and now I'm living in Costa Rica. So.
Amazing. God, I love that. So good.
But it's like it takes a while to like learn to trust that because we're so used to being like, no, I don't know if it's real. It's not scientific. I can't like prove it with my brain and my eyes.
Right.
And
right.
You kind of have to start small, and like the more that you like build that trust with yourself, like I think the more you can manifest, and the more you can like follow that to bigger things. So.
Totally, absolutely. I was talking to my parents about this recently because my parents are like just category 1 old white people, and they don't really do any of this stuff, right? And so this is a little woo woo for them. And I was telling, because my parents are also, they've been married for a really, really long time and they probably shouldn't have been, you know what I mean? Like they probably should have like found another way to go, but they're just in it. And it's like the wall and the ivy growing on the wall. And you're like, they're both coming down together. If you take one down, it's all coming down, So it's just too ingrown at this point. But I was telling them because they, this divorce stuff's terrifying for them. They're very cautious people. And this means that it's really hard for even people who deeply care about each other to stay aligned over multiple decades. And I said, I don't see this as I shouldn't have done that because I knew in that moment that was supposed to happen. I just think it's all supposed to be happening this way. And so, and the thing I think about is wildfires, because wildfires are very destructive. They kill things. They're horrible to maintain. Like you can't keep them constricted, right? And it's just chaos. It's deadly, destructive chaos. But a wildfire in nature is necessary for regrowth. And so it's destructive and it's killing things, but it's killing things that don't have enough life in them to stay. And so it looks like it's killing off life, but it's not. It's killing off things that don't have enough life to regrow anything. So there's seasons of life that are wildfire seasons, that if we don't plan around them, then we're like, why the heck is everything on fire again? And it's like, it's wildfire season.
Algae.
And it sucks.
It can, yeah. But also like, I think we have this idea that like, if we do a certain thing, there should be a certain outcome, but you cannot know, and you can't even know why something happens necessarily until way later, if ever, right? So it's just because you be with someone for a season of time, that doesn't mean that because you didn't get to forever that it's a failure, right? And it doesn't mean that there wasn't like really good stuff that came out of that. We kind of put these like time stuff like, oh, this should take this long, or this should last this long, or I'm going to do this for a decade, and then life happens.
Yeah.
You have to adjust.
Yeah, it's true.
It reminds me of this parable that I heard. I took this coach's like emotional intelligence course a little while back, and like the only thing that stuck with me was this parable of like there is no such thing as good or no such thing as bad, and it's like this old Chinese story, like ancient.
Yeah.
And it's about like it's like this farmer, he has a horse, and then the horse enters a race, and the horse wins, and the whole like community is like, oh my gosh, this is such a great horse, isn't this such a good thing for you? And the farmer's like, who can say what's good and what's bad? And then the next week, the farmer's son rides the horse and falls off and breaks his leg. And then the whole community is like, oh, this is such a bad thing for you. We're so sorry. This is so sad. And the farmer says, who can say what's good and what's bad? And then the next week, an army comes and takes all of the young men from the village and from the community, and the farmer's son is left behind because he had a broken leg. And then it's like this good thing that he was able to stay behind with his family. And there's like 7 other like layers to it, but the whole point is just like good becomes bad, becomes good, becomes bad, and none of it is good. And that's something that I'm just really hearing you say, Alyson, in this like fire story. And because there are certain trees that like require fire to germinate, like certain seeds. And so who can say when we're growing and when we're regressing? Like it all happens.
Do you feel it's so good, but it's also so frustrating because I love making things good and bad. Like I love it. I want things to be good and I want things to be bad. I used to like over like empathize. I'd be somebody would do something terrible and I'd be like, well, it's probably because they had a bad day or whatever. Now I'm like, that guy's a dick. Like I don't have time to waste my empathy. And I'll be like, that guy's a fucking prick. I don't need to spend any empathy on that. And it's like my way of like preserving my empathy. But I said this to somebody recently. I was like, he was like, well, he's not really a dick. He was like, it was Elon Musk. I was like, he for sure is 100%. But I was like, we can all agree. But he was like, why do you say that about people? Like, you're so like nuanced and you have all these ideas about like how people work. Like, why would you just categorize somebody like that? And I was like, because sometimes it just feels good to not have to waste my energy on like analyzing it, because it's so frustrating to me still to think that everything is good and bad in a way, because I don't know how to navigate with that. Like, I'm still really learning how to navigate that everything is good and bad, because it just feels like there's it's in conflict with what I want things to be, you know?
It's impossible. It's like so freaking hard. Like I hear you here. You know, I to a similar extent, like I love my parents very much. I think that they are good people. They also think that I am going to hell and that I worship Satan. Actually, like told me that earlier this. So
that's why we connected. Religious parents. Okay, got it.
Yeah. That category 1 white / the codependency. I like hear you.
Totally.
So it's like, how do we interact with these people that like, frankly, sometimes want to do us harm? Like, what do we do with the laws that are being passed to regulate our bodies? Like, things are intrinsically bad. And how do you find the good in it, or find the people who can like push forward towards the good? It's a bigger problem than I have an answer for, definitely.
No, I'm saying I don't think you have to find it necessarily. I think that, you know, you get to decide for your life and your viewpoint, like what you think about something, and you don't necessarily always have to see all sides of everything. It's a lot of work.
So much work.
Yeah. Well, maybe you have to live to see it. Like maybe the change that you make, or the action that you take, the good will come beyond you. And that's myself also.
Ooh, that's really good. Like seeing yourself as part of the bigger picture instead of being like that's the thing with like the way I was raised is like something good would happen to you and they'd be like, God has his hand on you, God has his hand in your life. And it's like, maybe, but like, what about all these other people that this didn't happen for? Like, does God not care about them then? Like, that's too complicated. But I think the thing that's weird to me, so I think there's a wisdom in knowing when to like extend that, like you're saying, Adrienne, like knowing when to like look at things from all the perspectives and when it's okay to just be like, nope, he's a dick.
People aren't like one thing or the other all the time. Like we're complicated, you know, and I think it's okay to say like sometimes we act in good ways and sometimes bad ways, and we don't even have to label it like that. Like there's this quote I remember recently, and it was something like, you're the hero in one person's story and the villain in someone else's, right?
Yeah.
And it's a good that like everyone has a different perspective on things, and everyone sees you differently, right? So what really matters is like what is working for you and what's healthy for you.
Yeah, definitely. We basically covered all of life, so
we solved all the problems, right?
Solved all the problems. This is a great summit. I like it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life Beyond 9 to 5. Subscribe so you don't miss anything. We're also going to start broadcasting this series live on LinkedIn. So make sure you find me on LinkedIn, Adrienne Alloway, and give me a follow there as well if you'd like to join us for one of these Life Beyond 9 to 5 conversations and maybe get your questions answered in our live panel.